I don't know. That 15 gig is too heavy for me. All right, so hopefully everyone's safe still. I think you all heard there was a COVID-19 outbreak in Kevin Street. So yeah, just be careful. Don't go in. I'm sure you all know by now, but like, just stay safe. Don't be silly. So we were gonna go level design in class today. The normal class, we're gonna accelerate a bit faster, and I'm gonna cover most of the lectures faster because I doubt we're gonna be back in college, to be honest, before next semester. I could be wrong, but I kind of doubt it. So we might as well just cover everything, get started in the assignments, and that way I can basically work through assignments with you as we go along. So hopefully that'll make things a bit more streamlined. So I'll leave questions about that till after. So for today, I was going to go to this lecture. At the end of this, the assignment is to make me a Metroidvania level, and I'll talk about that at the end. For the Minecraft stuff, so basically, you know, the tabletop miniatures that you all were making for me. The way I'm going to do it is you can continue doing the tabletop if you want, and you submit that, or we work together as a group on the Minecraft kind of Minecraft project, and that is a global group mark. So you can choose to submit that instead. Now, whatever the mark it is, the whole group gets the same mark. Um, or you can submit both, and I'll pick which one is the highest graded. So imagine you did a really, really good tabletop one. I might pick that one and go, okay, well, they got way better grades for that. That's for the first part of the project, right? So as you know, there are three parts. The first part is the tabletop slash Minecraft. The second part is what I'm going to do now, which is the Metroidvania level. This one has to be made in Unity and has to be playable. And then the final part will be a tutorialization. So basically, a mechanic that you are going to, through level design with minimal tooltips, teach the player how to learn X mechanic, whatever that mechanic is. Yes? No, ping pong was just like practice. That was the miniature stuff. You know, the one with distance and like the one boss versus two players. You weren't there last week, were you? Okay, well that was the assignment that was given. That it's on Google Classroom, so it's written there. I'll also update that assignment to include this Minecraft one. And as I give you the other parts of the assignment, I'll keep updating. Okay? Cool, cool, cool. All right. And any questions? Yes, Connor. Yeah, yeah, yeah. All of them all together. The only reason I'm drip feeding them to you is because in my experience in the past, whenever I gave all three to people, people kind of panicked and did all three and didn't do all three, I guess. Uh, well, I wouldn't even say well, but like I specifically try to make them slowly increase in difficulty so you kind of learn from the previous assignment. I try. Um, it's worked well in the past when I've done it, and people when they followed all three, they did way better. But yeah, when you do all three, because like for example, a lot of people like to do the tutorialization one because it seems really cool, so they'll jump straight to that. But without the kind of grounding from the first two, sometimes it doesn't work out. Not always. Like there's people who are really good at level design straight off. But in general, I find it better to drip feed. So I hope that's all right. Any other questions before we begin this one? I don't care what you give me as long as it's playable and I don't need to download anything. So I'll basically open up your submission. I'll read your notes. I double click whatever it is, EXE or MSI or whatever it is, and if it plays, I'm happy. If it doesn't play, that's automatic. Like no, sorry, you know what I mean? All right. So you get some marks if you have the notes, but you definitely will like you won't get most of the marks at all because I won't be able to test it. Like I won't be able to play it. The other thing is, and we'll talk about that later. Don't make it like super difficult, because then I might not be able to finish it. Or at least if you make it super difficult, have screenshots of where it's gonna go. So even if I can't make it through, you can still play it. I've had games in the past where it's difficult, not necessarily because of difficulty, but because of frustration, and that's a very important thing to remember. I don't know if anyone read that Celeste Twitter thread I posted up. it's really good because it just goes through really basic, simple platforming tricks of what to do so a player doesn't feel frustrated. So you can make the level really hard, but I won't be pissed off and I won't be angry at your game if those tricks are implemented. They're basically stuff like coyote time, stuff like teleporting players on top of the ledge, even if I miss the ledge a little bit. So ease of life stuff. So while a lot of people say like, "Oh, that makes it easier," yes, it does, but it just means you can make your level design much harder then, and it won't frustrate the player. Any other questions? Gee, okay, cool. So we'll bob through this pretty quick, and then we'll jump into our Minecraft stuff. So this is dungeon level design, and as always, first thing is your technical planning. I think you all saw this already. This is the Metroidvania layout. It's obviously in Japanese, but there's English writings beside it. This was their technical layout before they even built anything in the game. I also have one from Hitman here that I will send you right here. This is one of the Hitman levels. Like that's what it looks like at the start, and then it ends up with like something like this, right? So everything always starts from super baby basic sketching, which is why we're always keep going on about like paper prototyping and drawing stuff on paper, because having a really good basic block always makes for a much better level at the end. So it is a very common practice across the way, all across levels of from double A, triple A, indie, they'll all use this system. We're also going to talk about units. So I think we've already mentioned units in design practice and how important it is to have units. You can see how obvious it is in the old games, right? So you can literally see that's like one unit. There's even a line there. So this is one unit, and then 2 units, 3 units, and 4 units. Three and a half in this case, I think. And you know that every unit is one Lara Croft. So if it's one unit, Lara Croft can climb it. If it's 1.5 or two, Lara Croft can't climb it. So in the old games, it was very, very obvious, but we still use it today for ease of use and for ease of level design. So a very basic thing, you can see that all the jumps are all on the same level, even though they're separated. They are all exactly in the same level, which means I don't need as a player to kind of look at the distance and kind of go, can I make that? Can I not make it? Over time, I know I can jump 2 units. And while I'm jumping 2 units, I jump 1 unit high, so I know I can make this jump. And that just allows players to understand like your level design as you build it. Now we don't do it like this anymore, where it's like actual blocks. We use units, but we hide them. But we'll go over that now in a sec. So the first thing about units as well, sorry, not the first thing, but one major thing units allow is for randomization. So there was a point where procedural level design was very, very, very like in vogue, and it still kind of is. It's not quite as sexy as it used to be, but completely procedural level design. And if anyone is interested, Spelunky is a great example. There is a online Spelunky level design generator which has the algorithm that the developers use to create the level, and you can also kind of like press generate and it generates loads of randomized levels for you. um, but what it allows is for, because I know everything is based off units, every enemy fits in a unit block. So if I have an empty unit block, I know I fit an enemy in there. If I have a pickup, again, I know it fits in one unit block. I know how high things have to be, so when I randomly generate, I'm like, okay, I know the player must be able to get to the exit. And in order for the player to get to the exit, there must be a way for the player to get to the exit. As long as I know players can go up 2 units, and they can jump 2 units, and they can climb 1 unit, I can make sure algorithmically, before I even playtest a level, I know for a fact the player can get to the end. Right? It might be harder or easier or whatever it is, but in terms of possibility, it is possible because everything's based of units. Um, you, we can go to like more difficult randomization, but if you're going to do randomization, and this is a very high level concept of randomization, you need to always have constants. So obviously the variables are everything being randomized. So your tile levels, your enemies are generally kind of like randomized what type of enemy shows up, but you always need constants. So if anyone's played any randomized games, so this is Risk of Rain. Before there was Splunky. There's like Binding of Isaac, a load of roguelikes, especially if anyone has ever played roguelikes. They're all about randomization, but they always have a constant. So, for example, in every level, there's always an exit, and you always know what the exit looks like. There's always like a boss, and you always kind of know more or less what you need to do to the boss, and generally, you just need to kill the boss. So you'll always have these constants so players understand what's going on. But the variability is where replayability comes in, and where they're kind of like, ooh, I wonder what I'll get this time, comes into the gameplay. When you're going to go and make level design for me, and this is especially important for Metroidvania, I'm going to put this up. Each of these YouTube videos, there's no way we're going to be able to watch them all during this time, but I highly recommend watching each of these videos. So this one is from a game, Half-Life 2, if anyone's played it. Is it Half-Life 2? Yeah, this is Half-Life 2. Where there's this entire level, there's like a whole thing down here, you can't see it. There's a huge bridge, and at the end of the bridge, there's this thing that you need to get, which is a little car. So signposting objectives, you're telling the player exactly what they need to get to, even though it's over here. You can't even see it. It doesn't need a stupid, like, big triangle marker. You don't need a mini map telling you where to go. It just shows you here. Like, there is some narrative, but it is visibly seen here. I know then by looking out, I'm at a higher level, so I can look out over the problem that needs to be solved, which in this case is the bridge, and then I can see my path to get there. When you go to the grading, you can look down over the level and kind of see your path and kind of think about which way you're going to go. So it's really good level design because you can kind of see your pathway forwards, and you can begin planning even before you're within the level. There you go. So you can look up and go, like, okay, I know I need to get over there. I know this bridge needs to be here. I know that car is over here. So what do I need to do to get over there? And Metroidvania does this a lot as well. Even though Metroidvania is 2D, we talked about that last week. It still does show you that by hinting little bits of other levels. Um, we always want to also kind of just. It's always very good to give like a flyover or at least a kind of overview of the entire level. So this is from Bioshock Infinite. You can't play in half of these areas. Like they're just purely there for exposition. But it is important for like a larger scale view of the world and context. We'll talk a lot more about training and tutorialization in next week's video. Um, but especially games like Half-Life are really good at training. So, for example, in this little bit, if anyone's played Half-Life 2, I don't know if anyone has, it doesn't matter. There's this fucker that throws like poison crabs. The poison crabs jump at you, and they always take your health down to one, but they never take it lower. It's always just down to one. They like basically poison you to one, and your health slowly recovers over time. So what they have is this guy throws the poison crabs at you. It's like there's loads of little poison crabs on him. But they're the first time you ever meet him, there's this little gap where only the crab can get through, and you kill the crab, and then you go through and you meet that dude. So it's training you to what these do. It doesn't ever tell. There's no like voiceover that goes, "Oh, watch out, Gordon Freeman. That spider is gonna poison you and take your health down." No, nothing. It just gives you this. The spider comes out. It bites you most of the time because you're not sure what's happening, and you learn from that. And it allows you to learn this safe area. It's safe because remember the crab can only take you down to one. It can't kill you completely. And then after you kill it, you go through and you meet this fucker who's throwing crabs at you, and now you know what those crabs do, right? So before you even meet it, so you don't have to learn the entire gameplay of defeating this specific enemy all at once. It drip feeds it to you, and this is like how important level design can be, of how you present things to players. Um, Basically tutorializes and teaches them. Here is an example. If anyone read that architecture book last week that I posted up, this is just an example of how you can reuse the same shapes to create completely different things. And you want to be using that in game design just because we're very production focused in games. So we are not really the kind of like scale level, even AAA, we're not up to like a movie scenario where like a scene in a movie could literally take months, even though it lasts 10 seconds. We don't have that luxury. We don't have like bespoke luxury as of yet. I'm sure as tools change, we'll get there. But at the moment, we need to reuse stuff. So like, there's the very commons. I think I've shown you this in design practice already of like the boxes being reused. Even this freaking market crate thing is just put sideways. So that's a 2D vision. Like everyone knows about the Mario reusing of levels. The bushes and the clouds are the same. And even like when you start going to games, start paying attention to how the levels are laid out, first of all, how they're presenting problems to you, and how they're reusing certain things. And you'll kind of start to get to be able to tease out how they work. In terms of distance as well, you want to optimize your level. I've played way too many student games that are like half an hour of walking in between objectives. Walking is not gameplay. So I need to be doing things every 2 to 5 minutes. I need to be doing something new. And I need to be constantly engaged. You can never let me have walking for more than 2 or 5 minutes. I just get bored. And if 2 and 5 minutes is really long, if you just sit there for 2 minutes, it's ages. So you don't want someone just pressing W for that long. This is like a stupid joke, but on the left is Doom, a level from Doom, and you can kind of see where the rooms connect with each other. They create loops. So if you go through here, I might be like, ooh, what's over here? And I'll get a loop and go back, and I might see this and come up here. I've now tripled, in this small space, I've tripled my player distance. And generally I reward exploration by having enemies, by having loot drops, by having little things in there. And these loops create distance and create size. It makes a level feel way bigger than it is. You also want to have a design palette where you just have like this is exactly the same as this. It's reusing those assets. Um, this bridge is reused like a million times. Skyrim especially, if anyone plays Skyrim, it's very clear. I know it's ancient, but it's good for this. It's very clear where they reuse stuff. Skyrim is interesting because all the dungeons were designed by people all across the team. So it wasn't just game designers and level designers designing it. They'd also have like, QA people designing it or the sound and audio person designing it. Obviously they'd all be tweaked to make sure they worked, but it was like a huge across the team effort and you can see it in the quality of the level design. So some levels are really good and some are just like, oh my god, so boring. Even with this, it is grid based, and this is just an example of how they're used nowadays to create grid based games. So while they're all set up of these little pieces that link together and tile, you then hide the fact that it's a giant box by adding little meshes to hide the boxy nature of it, and it looks more organic than when you actually play it. So you see here that's reused. The steps are reused. This little pillar here, it's the same as this pillar, and it's just stuff just keeps getting reused over and over and over in Skyrim, which is why it's very good to look at to see how you can reuse stuff. It's a little too obvious. I'd hide it a bit better if I was making the game, but it is a useful learning tool. You definitely don't want this. This is Obsidian, I think. Not Obsidian. Fucking, what's the name of it? Oblivion. Jesus, Obsidian. So this is super boring. These are 3 different dungeons. Like, and this is where it's too much reusing. So all of them look the same. They all feel the same. There's even the same dead body here in both places, and that's a little bit too much reusing. So you kind of that's a middle line you want to have. Generally, organic stuff you get away with it a bit more. When you have blocky or non-organic shapes, you generally need to break it up with something organic because otherwise it looks very samey. So this is where we're talking about like, and I really recommend reading that Celeste thread. It'll take you like 10 seconds. Where challenge is really good and it's fine for players to feel challenge. It is not fine for players to feel frustrated. And frustration comes from controls. Yeah. I did not pin it, but let me put it here. So if you go to Matt Thorson, It's like a pin tweet there. So we can actually go through it now really quickly. So it's a short thread of Celeste game feel, and Celeste is really good in terms of game feel. So you can see Coyote time where it you can kind of jump all the way up to here, which is basically an entire unit. In fact, more. It's like a unit and a half. The player can still jump, right? So even though technically I should jump here, which is a pixel perfect jump, you'll hear that term. If you do pixel perfect is almost always shit. It almost always feels terrible. You have to be forgiving because that way you can make the level hard as crap. So I'm not pissed off because you're helping me do all this stuff and I still can't finish the level. It's my fault. As opposed to if I had to do a pixel perfect jump because of the lag of the machine and my lag of my brain, I might think that I actually did press it here, even though I pressed it when I was here. But I'm gonna blame you for that. I'm not gonna blame myself. It feels like I should have pressed it here. So Coyote time gets rid of that. Here is a jump buffer. So if I press jump around here or something, it still keeps the idea that I'm gonna jump and then jumps me straight away, if that makes sense. I don't have to wait till I'm actually on the ground before I jump. So in the example of the character controller that I gave y'all, there was a ground check underneath, and you can see there was a little bit of height on the ground check, and that was on purpose so you can jump as soon as the ground check touches the ground, even though the ground check's like technically quite a bit below the player. And the more forgiving it is, it's like the bigger the ground check is, the more forgiving it'll be. So this is like, it's very hard to see, but if you keep pressing jump, it halves the gravity at the height. So it makes it feel you have more time to control your player, so you feel like you have more control. This one is you can see you technically the player jumped into this. This is very common, where in a pixel perfect game I'll jump and I'll hit my head here, and I won't get bumped, but this bumps the player to the side. The same with this. This bumps the player up, so technically it missed, and pixel perfect it would stop right there, but it bumps the player up because it knows that's what you're trying to do, so it feels good. The same with this with platforms. It bumps you up onto the platform. You see that like it literally hit halfway. And this one is just storing momentum. This is stuff that just makes sense, but also like it is a mechanic in the game, so you kind of have to time it so you're jumping while the lift stops. But as you can see, there's a bit of a buffer time there. So even if I don't get it perfectly, it still lets me go. And you can wall jump even though you're not on the wall. You can see there. And the same thing here, it's a little more complicated, but you can see that you can do it from even further away. So that one's like 5 pixels. This is 2 pixels, this is 5 pixels. And here is like, this is complicated, so you can read that later. It just kind of figures out what you're trying to do. There's 2 different types of jumps, but based on context, it figures out what you're trying to do and allows it. Now, I know this is all very complicated stuff. Some of it is anyway. But really basic stuff like Coyote time, that should be easy enough to do. And like every platformer should have Coyote time. It's especially if you're trying to be like very difficult. If you don't have Coyote time, you're just gonna feel frustrating and stupid. Um, a lot of it can be accomplished with that. The capsule collider is helps, but for example, the capsule collider won't help if you do the dash into the platform. That's not going to help at all, right? Like it's just going to hit on its side. Um, there is a lot of checks. That's why the code I gave you doesn't have any of those checks. It's very basic code. Um, but there are a lot of checks that you can do. But you're right, Connor. Like the very basic minimum is use a bloody capsule collider and extend the colliders. That's the minimum. Just do that, and that makes it already feel better. Um, the other like if you look at the Celeste player character code, I have a copy somewhere. It's 5,000 lines of code, like so. It is checking a lot of stuff, and you're not necessarily going to do that for a student project, but it is just something to be aware of. It does make games feel a lot better if you do that. This has everyone seen this actually? This is like I love Cuphead. Oh my god, like Yeah, so like everyone is shitting on the journalists. Everyone was shitting on the journalists, but to be fair, like I know it's a game that's made to be really hard, but this is a fucking tutorial. So let's have a look at it. That's fine. That's fine. Like, okay, he's terrible. He's terrible, but also this is like the third thing you're trying to teach a player, and you got to remember the player has just started this game, so it's a little bit too hardcore. Like the cylinder should be lower, or at least closer to the cube, just for the first one, just so they can teach it, and you can then test it again by making a full hard one later. But for now, come on, let him do the easy one. He is very bad though. I mean, not really, because journalists are paid to be critics, right? Like, there's a lot of things that are a little unfair. This is placed very far away. So, to be fair, I think this looks like you finish the tutorial bit and then now go to this tutorial bit. So, I think that's why now he's figuring, oh, I need to use this to do that. Exactly. Even that, it would be way better because he wasted like a minute trying to do it from here because you got to think about how people think. I finished this tutorial bit, so I'm onto this tutorial bit. I don't need to care. So I really like this game, but that was like pretty bad. And people are all shitting on the journalist correctly because the journalist is terrible, but also the level design wasn't really that good there. It's kind of a bit on both sides, IMO. So you always want to encourage as well in your level design creativity. Try to have multiple options and multiple routes to get around if you can. So like as I said way before, Deus Ex is one of my favorite games, even though it's like fucking 20 years old at this stage. Um, it still allows players way more freedom than a lot of modern games. You can see just in this, there's options here, here, and here. You're trying to get into this building here. We can go through here. You can go up there. There's also other options that are not even listed here where you can talk to people and they'll snuggle you around a back entrance. You can get on the roof up on the other side. So there's multiple exit and entry points into this one little level. And each of the exit and entry points um, tests different skills. So one of them will test like defusing bomb skills. Another one will test like speech checks. Another one is straight up combat. Another one tests like platforming. So it is depending on what skill you have as a player, you can choose the entry route, and that's really nice for a game. And then just like give players tools, you can have a giant level if you give players tools to be able to get around it really quickly. Like you get this thing really fast in Zelda. Like it's not I can't remember how long you need to play, but it's only like what 2 hours maybe, and then you get it, maybe three. So you kind of want to encourage these kind of methods of travel because they make it more interesting, and they make traversing giant distances, um, I guess, like palatable to players. And this is a really important thing for a lot of level design, especially for single player games. The safe hub is really important. So even in a game like Hotline Miami, you always go back to the safe hub. You never get attacked in the safe hub. Um, you start off in Zelda in like the safe hub. Pokemon start you off in a completely safe area, and there's multiple reasons for this. It generally tests and shows players how to move, how to interact, how to do basic talking to people, and also Legend of Dungeon. This game is it's a co-op game. It's pretty good. It also allows you to do character changes and play with your attacks in an area where they don't cost you anything and they don't hurt people. So it just allows you to test your areas and play. And similar to the Oasis, generally the safe hub in these larger games is probably a room in the Oasis. The Oasis is like an area where it's safe enough. There's usually no fighting in it. And you can trade and you can like interact with people and just kind of like it's an extension of the safe hub. But there are rules. If you attack people, you will be killed. The safe hub generally, if you attack everyone, nothing happens. The Oasis is safe enough, but if you attack people, you'll be killed. That's a different thing. But both of these combine allow players to have like a relaxation from the outside, and that's why often designers will put in like your shops in there, your upgrades, your level ups will all be in here. And a lot of character interaction will be in these areas as well. So you want to create like stakes in the level design. So generally, a lot of like memories come from when players affect the game world. This one's from Fallout 3, if anyone's played that, where you can literally remove an entire city from the map. Yeah, Megaton. Um, and this is really good. Like people still talk about it because it just means that you feel you're not just a player in a game world. You actually have a real effect in the game world. And even though it's scripted, everything's like set up for that to happen. It makes you as a player feel like your decisions have consequences. Um, just when you're designing the level, be careful. Like this is Castlevania, I think. Yeah, it is Castlevania Symphony. It is huge, so just be careful when you're designing not to go crazy. I've had students come to me with like 5 different pages of like level. It's huge. Like I don't need this extent. Like even a third of this is fine. A third or like half of this is loads already. Um, but in this level, you can kind of see the different zones. They're separated by colors, and a lot of the different zones are separated by abilities. So I might start off here, but I can't get up here until I unlock. Sorry, I don't start off here. I start off. I don't remember where I start off. I don't remember where, but you start off somewhere like here, and you can't get to the other areas until you get a key or unlock a door, or get an ability that double jumps you, or dashes you across an unpassable ledge. So you'll be able to see the entrance to the other level, but you can't get there until you unlock the ability. Were you going to say something, Connor? I can't even fucking figure it out. Like that's the forest here, and that's like the final. I don't know where you start off. Yeah, yeah, that's reckless. But I, here. Isn't it this one, no? Bottom left. This one. No, no, it's definitely not bottom. Surely it's not bottom. Yeah, because this bottom's got the lava shit. Like you don't start there. So like, let's say you start off here, boop, 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 and you can see all the other bits. Obviously, you can't jump up this high, so there must be some way to get up here. But you need to get something to get up here, and then you go up here, and then slowly everything slowly opens up to you as you unlock shit. This is just a way, a tool. It may not be the way you want to do it, but I have found that it's the easiest way to do it. To design something as crazy as this with all the interlocking things, you actually start off really simple. So this video is by what's the Mark Brown. He's very good. Like, Boss Keys is this series, but he also makes Game Maker's Toolkit. I highly recommend watching both of those YouTube playlists. But basically, he breaks down a bunch of different level designs, and almost all of them can be traced to a path. So, like, you go here, go there, then you do this. No, wait, you go here, you do that, you do this. And it kind of, you can, oops, sorry, that's much easier. You can see the pathways of how to get to an entire level can be broken down into just a pathway. And you know where to get a key, when you're going to get a key, when you're going to get a door, when you're going to get the next key, when you're going to get an upgrade, then you finally get the boss key, and then you go all the way back to the boss. So the basic layout is this, but it gets, when you apply it to an actual game, this is this applied to the actual game. You can then see how to place different areas, just because you know what's going to happen in those areas. And you can slowly, again, flesh it out from simple, always start simple, and then complicate it as you go on. Highly recommend watching this because I may not be explaining it that well here, It may be harder to see, but when you watch the video, it makes it very clear how this layout is applied to the actual gameplay. And you can kind of see there's all these extra rooms which are just there to be extra, really. Um, but once your basic layout is in place, you can then start thinking about adding extra rooms. And this is how you get a very complex level layout, by basically starting simple and adding from there. Here's another one where it's like it's non-linear, so you can kind of do what you want. But even in non-linear games, you still have a semblance of linearity. There's still certain things you have to do before you can unlock certain areas. And this is like a very complicated version of how you would apply that concept into a level design space. So these are like, you want people to do all of these in this order, and then you can apply them to the level design. And the order is linear here, but I could start here and I could put this second bit all the way over here if I wanted to. So the actual layout is irrelevant to the timeline, I guess you could call it, of the level. But the timeline of the level allows you just to kind of understand where you need players to go. This is from a really good book, Architectural Approach to Level Design. I think there's a copy in the library. If not, I haven't been able to find a PDF online. If anyone can, let me know. But it's really good. It uses those architecture tips of that PDF that I shared with you, but applies it to actual game design. So first of all, you can see everything is unit based. Again, grid based, unit based. But these two examples just show this is fine. You know, you can see something, you're like, ooh, cool. But this doesn't feel like I'm smart. This feels like I'm being told, hey, stupid, here's the thing, go pick it up. This makes me feel like I'm a bit smarter, because I can see this. It's a wall, but I can jump over it because it's 2 units. I know I can jump over that. And there's a whole extra bit behind it. So I'm like, what's there? And if I go there, I am rewarded. So this, even though you as a designer are specifically designing this for the player, makes the player feel way more intelligent, as opposed to like, hey, go here, open this. Here's just some examples of like how planning is created, put in place, and implemented. You can see here, this is from Uncharted. Naughty Dog especially uses Google SketchUp. So they'll design the levels in something called white boxing. Some people call it gray boxing. And you just have the level as there, so it's playable. You can move around in it. You can see scale. And then you, like concept artists, will take it and try to prettify it up, and then it's implemented into an actual level. All the while it keeps being play tested, but the basic level just looks like a bunch of boxes. But it's important so you can see where cover lanes are, where things are, where your sight lines are, and the sense of scale as well. So Evan was playing this website, not playing, using this website last week, which is really cool. The NoClip website, where you can look at a bunch of different dungeons and a bunch of levels, and you can like fly through them. And there's also the SketchUp blog of Uncharted that I had here. So your second assignment for me is basically to create a Metroidvania level, using reading through all those slides, watching those videos, and creating a level that's playable, that I need to unlock something before I can reach the next parts of the level. And there's a clear progression through it. Any questions?